Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Islip Planning Board meeting for Wednesday, April 26th. Just two things. If you're an applicant and you're here, I would remind you to keep your presentations to 30 minutes or less. If you are a member of the community who would like to speak, there are yellow cards. Please fill one out. We ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. I'm going to ask everybody to stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 1 on the agenda has been adjourned, so we're going to go to item number 2. We have South Shore Shrimpy LLC, PB 2023-014, south side of East Main Street, 27A, 218.6 feet east of Maryland Street, East Islip, 300 Montauk Highway. The applicant requests a modification of Planning Board special permit conditions associated with PB 2005-012 in order to modify the hours of operation. Parking relaxation is required as part of the application. Good evening.
There we go. Good evening to the board. My name is Joseph Clemens, a partner in the firm German & Clemens Architecture PC, located at 3275 Veterans Memorial Highway, Suite B11, Ronkonkoma, New York, 11779. I'm speaking to you this evening with regard to Shrimpy's Burrito Bar of East Islip, located at 322 East Main Street in East Islip, a tenant space within the Heckscher Shopping Center situated on the south side of East Main Street, approximately 218.6 feet east of Maryland Street. The purpose of this application is simply to request a modification of Planning Board special permit conditions associated with PB 2005-012 in order to modify the hours of operation. Initially, upon filing with the Building Department for the proposed interior alteration, it was recommended by both the Zoning Department and Planning staff that rather than file for a new special permit for the proposed minor restaurant, that we utilize an existing, non-active, and previously approved special permit. As such, we were provided with the PB 2005-012, an application initially of Nubia's Enterprise, Inc., which requested what we believe was a Quiznos sandwich takeout. Per these provided conditions, the hours of operation for the special permit was limited to 11 a.m. to 9 p.m., Monday through Saturday, and 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. on Sunday. It is a request of my client, Mr. Ryan DiPaolo of Shrimpy's, who's on his way here, to modify the hours of operation to be 11:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Thursday, 11:30 a.m. to 12 a.m. Friday through Saturday, and 11:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Sunday. Shrimpy's of East Islip is actually the third location for the chain, which was first established in August of 2018. Even though it is still very early since its grand opening held back on March 20th, the establishment already has rave reviews with a 4.8 rating out of 5 per 57 votes via DoorDash. With years of experience within the food services, along with their dedication to client satisfaction, I have no doubt this Shrimpy's will continue to create yet another successful establishment, which will benefit the local community. As such, we would respectfully request that you grant the approval for the modified hours of operations so that they can do just that.
Thank you. I don't have any cards. Anybody in here wish to be heard on this application? Not seeing anyone. I'm going to turn to Ms. Wozniak for a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subject restaurant is located in the Pat's Market Shopping Center in East Islip. The restaurant applied for a change of use permit with the building division in March of 2022. Tonight, the applicant is looking to modify previous special permit conditions in order to change the hours of operation. The applicant would like the restaurant to operate Monday through Thursday, 11:30 a.m. to 9 p.m., Friday and Saturday, 11:30 a.m. to 12 a.m., and Sundays, 11:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. There have been several planning board special permits issued for this property for restaurants, and the hours of operation are consistent with those other businesses. The shopping center itself is in good condition. However, the fire marshal's office did note on several occasions that the dumpsters were not being kept in the designated dumpster enclosures. Based on this, planning recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions, which include a condition regarding the dumpster enclosures. It should be noted that some parking stalls may be displaced as a result of providing additional dumpster enclosures, so a slight parking relaxation has been provided for in the proposed conditions as well.
So we're in agreement on the dumpster issues that Ms. Wozniak raised.
As per the client, he says the property owner, per his conversation earlier, was in agreement, as well as his per the conditions provided.
And the conditions are agreed to as well.
I believe so.
Are there any questions from the board? Anything further from the applicant? Is there a motion? Oh, sorry, the right side's got you beat tonight. Mr. Moriarty. It's a motion by Mr. Moriarty to close the public hearing and grant the application subject to the terms and conditions. Second by Mr. Bruno. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? The application is granted. Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda, Planning Board application, public hearing, Bohemia Commons LLC, PB 2023-015, northwest corner of Sunrise Highway, State Route 27 and Locust Avenue, Bohemia, 4585 Sunrise Highway. Applicant requests a modification of special permit conditions associated with TC 3670 in order to increase the size of a restaurant. Applicant also requests a parking relaxation in connection with the restaurant expansion and a personal service establishment. Is the applicant here? Oh, that's why we're very light tonight.
Good evening once again to the board. My name is Joseph Clemens, a partner in the firm Germany Clemens Architecture PC, located at 3275 Veterans Memorial Highway, Suite B11, Ronkonkoma, New York, 11779. I'm speaking to you this evening with regard to 2 separate tenant spaces within the Bohemia Shopping Plaza, located on the northwest corner of Sunrise Highway and Locust Avenue. The purpose of this application is to request a modification of special permit conditions associated with TC 3670 in order to increase the size of a restaurant. Additionally, we are also requesting a parking relaxation in connection with said restaurant expansion and a personal service establishment. To provide a brief history of events, our office was initially engaged to assist with a proposed interior alteration to convert a former occupied and used realtor office of approximately 1,000 square feet into a hair salon. Upon submission, the Town of Islip Zoning Department requested a more current survey, as well as an updated key plan showing all legal occupancies as listed on the current legal certificate of occupancies, including correspondent unit numbers, the legal occupant, use, space size, and parking requirements for each unit per subdivisional land development regulations, Appendix E. At this time, it was determined that the parking requirement for the proposed Nova James Hair Studio required 6.8 stalls rather than the 5.9 per the last CO'd AT&T retail space, a difference of 0.9 parking spaces, or a 0.2% relaxation of the total requirement. Our office had provided a couple different of options at this time to satisfy the 1 stall difference. However, we were notified that the proposed parking stalls were not accepted by the engineering division and a parking relaxation would be required. At this time, we were made aware that a compliance permit application was required to legalize the work constructed under expired permit 160751 for the Pita Grill. As such, our office was engaged by the property owner to file a certificate of compliance application to legalize the Go Greek space, which presently exists today. From the FOIL documentation received by our office via the Town of Islip Building Department, it appears that the initial application for Floria Pita Grill or Go Greek was submitted in October of 2017. The plans under the subject application appear fairly consistent with the existing field conditions observed by our office. As such, we were unsure as to how this application has gotten as far as it did without planning approval for the associated minor restaurant use. It should be noted, however, that the Town of Islip Certificate of Occupancy, a permit for public assembly for 30 persons for Unit 4611, which is our tenant space, for a Quiznos sub was initially issued in October of 2003 and remained active until February of 2010. Regardless, it was requested that we utilize an existing non-active and previously approved special permit to move forward with. As such, we were provided with a formally approved TC 3670, an application initially of Connecticut Associates, which requested a Blimpies sandwich.
Mr. Clemens, I don't think any of this is in dispute by us. You can certainly read it if you want or submit it to make it part of the record, but I don't think you'll find any opposition from us on that.
All right. Aside from that, realistically, the only thing we're asking for is the increase of square footage size, and it would be a 4.7 space parking relaxation or 0.9 relaxation, which is fairly de minimis. So that's really all we have.
I don't have any cards. Anybody wish to be heard on this application who just came in? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to turn to Ms. Wozniak to give us a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The property is located on the northwest corner of Sunrise Highway and Locust Avenue in Oakdale, and it's improved with 2 multi-tenant commercial structures and a freestanding bank. Tonight, the applicant is looking to maintain an existing Greek restaurant located in the western building on site. The restaurant is currently operating without the benefit of a CO. However, a certificate of compliance was filed in November to legalize the use. The restaurant is approximately 2,300 square feet with 22 seats. A special permit was issued in 1989 for a former Blimpies restaurant, and the applicant wishes to modify that previous permit for this new restaurant. In addition to this, the applicant is looking to obtain a parking relaxation for a change of use for a hair salon located in the eastern building on the site. The hair salon is approximately 1,000 square feet with 4 stations. There are no known parking issues for the site, so based on this, planning recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Anything? Oh, Mr. Bruno.
I just have to ask, Mr. Clemens, here, and from what I can see on the report, there are 346 parking spaces in that site,
Yes, sir.
and you in engineering couldn't find one space to land bank?
Not one that they were accepting.
Okay, thank you.
Covenants and restrictions are agreed to?
I tried reaching out to the client. I was not able to get them on the phone to discuss. If possible, I respect if we can.
It'll be
approve,
subject to
coming to conditions with planning.
It'll be subject to if there's an issue, you come back before us.
Okay.
But that is their motion. Mr. Bruno.
Make a motion that we close the hearing and grant the application subject to the covenants being agreed to.
It's a motion by Mr. Bruno to close the public hearing and grant the application subject to agreeing to the covenants and restrictions. Second by Mr. Frugieri. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Your application is granted.
Thank you.
Item 4 on the agenda, Town Board application, public hearing, ISP Central District LLC, CZ 2023-005, south side of Central Avenue, approximately 509 feet west of Pacific Street, Hop Hog 0 Central Avenue. Applicant requests a change of zone from Industrial 1 to Industrial Transition District in order to allow for the outdoor storage of storage containers. Site plan modifications may be required as part of the application. Good evening to the applicant.
Evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Michael Williams from R&W Engineers PC. On behalf of the applicant, Gary Krupnik is here this evening, the landowner. The application before you is for a change of zone, as was just outlined, and the specific purpose is for outdoor storage. There's a tenant identified, which is Pods, a nationally recognized brand. Their model includes outside storage of their containers. The majority of the inventory is inside. They do have another facility within a quarter mile of this facility. They just have grown so large, they're overflowing. They're looking for another building. So Mr. Krupnik has Pods lined up to move in to the building once it's constructed. It does have the outside storage component to it. The outside storage is their own pods. They're very recognizable, the red lettering on the white pod. So Mr. Krupnik's here to answer any questions as far as pods and their activity. But this is generally down the end of Central Avenue. I don't know if anybody's ever gone over there. It's heavily industrial, no residential for anywhere to be seen. So once again, we're requesting this application for the change of zone to support outside storage of the property. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not have any cards for anybody wishing to speak. Did anybody come in wish to be heard on this? Not seeing anyone. I'm going to turn to Ms. Wozniak for a staff report. Mr. Colby. I don't know why mine's. Oh, no, it is Colby. Look at that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As stated by the applicant, this application proposes a warehouse with accessory storage of containers on an existing vacant property. The proposed industrial transition district is generally preferred in areas surrounded by other industrially zoned properties, which the surrounding area is. The conceptual site plan before you shows 15% overall landscaping and a 42% parking relaxation. The engineering division has reviewed the plan and estimates that the landscaping is closer to 12.5% overall, requiring a landscape relaxation of about 33% overall and about 37% in the front yard. The land bank stalls behind the building may not be viable if the use of the building were to change, or if the land bank stalls were required for installation and additional loading areas were needed for a use such as a warehouse, should loading areas be required in the back of the building. As per their review, it does not appear tractor trailers can easily traverse the property based on this plan. The board could consider the $5 a square foot per square feet of missing landscaping as a mitigation fee and require those land bank stalls within the outdoor storage area should the use change or require more parking. Strict covenants would be needed to be put in place to enforce this. Other comments from the engineering division on the site plan included that there were no truck or vehicle movements provided to show how the overhead doors would be accessed. The overall floor area ratio is proposed to be 40%, where 30% is permitted in the industrial transition district. The eastern driveway is proposed to be entirely on the property to the east. The viability of this cross-access cannot be determined based on the grading information provided between the two properties. Further, a minor subdivision is needed to subdivide off the subject property from that to the east due to the fact that this was already subdivided without the review and approval of the town. Based on the foregoing, the staff would recommend that the board reserve decision tonight so that we can go over these site plan issues with the applicant before bringing this back for recommendation.
So based on Mr. Colgan's report, I think there are some issues that are outstanding. I don't know if they've been
I can
addressed.
adjust some of them. So the truck circular movement around the building has already been resolved. We show that on the plan, the truck circulation, entering on the west side entrance and exiting on the east side. There is an existing easement agreement between the properties. Mr. Capitano owns property to the east, Mr. Krupnik to the west. On record, right? So there is an easement on record for the purposes of the truck circulation specifically. And as far as the loading and unloading, so POD's model includes forklifts. And I can't control, what happens in the future, but the building is set up with a recess for loading docks. And you see that it's an L-shaped building, and that little L is specifically designed for loading docks with the length of the loading dock that the movement can be made. We've already proven that out. As far as the relaxations go, it is heavily industrial area, and we are asking for the relaxations. There was I guess, lack of a better term, taking by the town for a cul-de-sac construction without approval from the landowner. So that that loss of property is already taken into account as far as the relaxation goes. So Mr. Krupnik can speak better towards that. There's a history with this property that goes back quite a ways.
Mr. Ruggieri.
I'm assuming based on the tenant, the majority of the material stored in the containers on site would be household type goods?
Primarily, these pods are empty. They're brought to homes and put on their properties. People can store their stuff while they're doing either interior renovations or whether they have moved. But when they leave the site, they're generally empty. There's very few which have materials inside. Correct. Go ahead.
Let me answer those questions. Let me just back up to the situation with some of the ratios that you were given by staff. Long before this ever got to the staff, the current staff, determination was made that the street in front of us that we own, the right-of-way that we own, the circle that the city allowed the street to terminate in now, is all on my property. And so we went in, sat down, established that with the town, and the quid pro quo was that we would get some relaxation we need to be able to get the density out of this, to use the piece. In return, for no fee at all, because nobody could explain how all this happened, without going to the owner and saying, eminent domain, we're going to take it, we're going to pay you for it, or anything. They just put this thing in. We actually own to the middle of the street. The quid pro quo was that we would be able to build this building and do what we were doing. This goes back to when Bill Mannix was there, and it was all done through the IDA during the acquisition. Sal Capitano was a former town of Islip chief engineer. He owned the property. He subdivided it. He built the other building that's there. There were some town agreements back and forth. We're not party to that, but what we are party to is that the easement that runs on the east property line of Capitano's property, family still owns that. is a permanent recorded deeded easement on his property that runs to our site in perpetuity. So it could never change. You're never going to lose the eastern driveway or anything like that. As to the ratios of landscaping and that type of thing, if you take my property that the town is using, put that back into the computation, I think you're going to find that this is pretty much in balance. So unfortunately, we've been through several iterations of staff. So some of this didn't get passed through, but it is all memorialized and the deeds are what they are. Nothing has changed. The deal here was that we would give them the circle and the property they needed to correct what was done improperly years ago. We're also building a retaining wall, if you look at the site plan, because the owner to the west on our west property line well exceeded the 3-on-1 ratios of the grade when he built that piece, and that was overlooked. So we've agreed to cut it back, run a 10-foot offset, and build a very expensive retaining wall to now make this work, which we shouldn't have to do. So there were quite a few back and forths, but there's been several staff changes and stuff like that. And this has passed through several hands. The immediate property behind this is a building that I own. Safe Light is in it, and adjacent to that is an existing 200,000 square foot, 10-acre property that I developed in concert with the town of Islip, provided them drainage that they needed. That was an old C&D dump, and we resurrected that at one time it was a listed site for the DEC. And we fixed that in concert with the town. So we have a long history of going through problematic properties with the city and bringing them to fruitful yields for the city and us. This, like the pods behind us and the 200,000 square feet behind us, will be a Town of Islip IDA. It's already been reviewed by the people that are in there now. Again, this goes back to when Bill Maddox was even there. And we will be taking this in for an IDA before we do anything further, once we get this piece established. But pods cannot function without the outside storage. And this is patterned after the building that Pods has right now on my other 10 acres directly behind us with outside storage. So there's nothing strange about it. You can't see the outside storage in the street or highway or service road. So tucked into what would have been a loading dock if we were going to build a conventional building with 4 loading docks. So it's just a little bit of history, and there's some pieces missing, and we're prepared to straighten it out with the city again for the 3rd or 4th time, but that's what the bottom line is. We own the property that the city is using, including the turn at the end of the street.
Mr. Frugiero, then Mr. Bruno.
Yeah, but to my question, the containers that'll be stored on site overnight,
The
those are going to
outside
be,
containers are empty.
they're empty.
It's corporate policy.
Okay.
The only thing that's out there stacked 3 high are empty containers. That's it.
Okay. My
That's
only
it.
concern was that if there were ever any hazardous materials to be stored there.
Understood.
Okay,
Understood.
that answers my question.
It's outside.
Mr. Bruno.
Yeah, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
You've just said that if it weren't for the taking, for the cul-de-sac, the numbers on this would work. The first thing I would ask is that
Come pretty
Mr.
close.
The first thing I would ask is that Mr. Williams do the analysis
Okay.
prior to as if the taking weren't there, and let's see, because I have to tell you, just looking at it, looking at the numbers, this looks, it feels significantly overdeveloped. Okay, so that's a feel to it. The second part so I'd like Mr. Williams, and not right now, obviously, Mike, but to provide us with those numbers to either verify what you've said or to find out where we would be. The second thing that I'm having difficulty with, one, we do have to look at the future. I mean, that's why we're a planning board, okay? And yes, I think there's a problem with loading, but what I'm having a problem with immediately is your 24 land bank spaces in the back. Isn't that where you're putting the storage?
That's exactly where they go in the.
Okay, you can't count something twice. In other words, if we had told you to land bank, or you would have offered to land bank spaces where there was landscaping, you would not be allowed to count that landscaping as part of the landscaping requirement as if the spaces go in. I don't see how you use that at this point for outdoor storage and at the same time count it as land bank parking. Okay, so to me, it's one or the other. Don't get to kind of double dip on that.
Don't tell them. Tell them. It's supposed to have been relaxed up front. It's turned out to be a staff suggestion that they'd like to see where it could go if it ever converted to something.
But that's not the point. The point is that you have a required number of parking spaces, okay? And I'm saying that I'm not objecting to the outdoor storage. I'm not objecting it to it being in the back. But I'm saying if that's where the storage is going, you can't also tell me that that's going to be land bank parking spaces.
That would go with the change of use.
So Mr. Bruno, you're correct about that. And as of probably 36 hours ago, the plan did not have the land bank parking on there. That was a staff suggestion to show it in that spot.
And I can understand you would want to do
And I-
that to
and I
reduce it, but I'm
questioned
saying,
You know,
I'm saying if you take those spaces out, then what's starting to happen is the feeling that I'm getting looking at it is that frankly, it's overdeveloped because you're going to be asking for a very large parking relaxation then.
The use though, and we can demonstrate that to anybody on the board here, many people from the town government have been through the.
But
plans
in the future, there'll be other potential uses for this.
Right, and so let's just go down the road 10 years, because they're 10-year leases. Okay, 10-year leases, 10 years, they move out, somebody else moves in, you got to punch in 4 loading docks. It's all set up for drainage, everything else is there. The way PODS operates right now, and we understand that we'd have to go and re-CO the building, and we're covenant to that, is if we had to punch in 4 loading docks, and which is what the notch was designed for to begin with, then we would have to go for relaxation on the parking. PODS only has 6 to 8 people operating out of that building. There's no need for it. In the future, if it agreed to a different use, we'd have to come back for an adjustment.
I also
And-
believe in the future, if you converted it at a 40,000 square foot building, I think you're going to end up with the loading docks there, as Mr. Williams has also noted, in which case it, again, still wouldn't be the land bank parking. I think what's happening is that I believe that land bank parking never gets used in either scenario. That what happens is it either becomes loading docks or it's your outdoor storage, in which case what I'm saying is I think you're 24 spaces short of what you're asking for. And that's really what I'm saying is that I agree with you. I don't think it's ever land bank parking. I think it's either, it's one or the other.
Gary, there's 1,000 square feet of office in this building. 1,000 square feet.
It's just, but there's a standard to what everything is there.
No
So,
question.
okay.
The ratios are.
Thank you.
So obviously, there are a lot of questions that need to be resolved. I think you need to get together with the planning staff and see if you can resolve those and bring it back before us. I guess the concern is to Mr. Bruno's point, if in fact the PODS place is no longer in business and somebody else goes in there, you have to add loading docks to the back, you lose your parking in the back, because obviously the current loading docks aren't going to work. So you have a problem there. I'm not going to ask you to post a bond for however much it's going to cost you to knock a building down if in
Right.
fact you lose that lease. Also, I think you need to meet with the engineering staff as relates to the truck plan that you submitted in terms of how they access the lot and utilize the lots. They have some concerns about that. I know you've submitted it, but there are some concerns that have been raised. So I think the best bet is to have a sit down with planning and engineering and go through the application and the site. I'm not saying it's a hurdle you can't overcome, but I think it's, you should sit down with them, resolve those issues. And if you resolve those to the satisfaction of the planning department or close to it, we'll get you back on the next agenda or the one shortly thereafter to try and move this forward. But there are definitely issues outstanding that at this point would make us reserve decision tonight so you can resolve those issues.
That's fine. There are drawings, and we did run the turn calculations on the computer showing that the trucks are easily in and out of that slot.
Well, I mean, I have that discussion. If there's still disagreement and that's the only issue, the planning board will, make a
It
decision
was
as
one of the
to.
other sheets before they said put the parking. So,
But let's get all the issues resolved. If that's the only outstanding issue, we'll look
Right.
at both the engineering report and as well as your expert's report. We'll make that decision. So let's hope we get down to one issue. so we can get this moving forward. Anything else from the applicant? Is there a motion? Who's that? Mr. Moriarty? It's a motion by Mr. Moriarty to close the public hearing, reserve decision. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Matamore. All in favor? Opposed, abstentions were reserved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 5 on the agenda, site plan modification decision item, Glenn Schneider, SP 2022-048, southwest corner of Carlton Avenue, County Route 17, and DPW Drive, Central Islip, 271 Carlton Avenue. Applicant requests a parking determination and relaxation of FAR and lot occupancy for the SUSA Sports Complex. Good evening, Mr. Germano. Mr. Germano, before you start and get crazy into this, I can tell you there are very few questions from us on this. We've all reviewed it, but feel free to raise whatever issues you'd like in your presentation. I can go right to a staff report if you like and come back with questions, or you can do a presentation.
You want to just do the staff
Whatever you
report?
prefer. It's
Yeah,
your application.
Look, I just wanted to put, are you familiar with the site?
Yes.
You are, okay, so you know the site. I just want to tell you that, right, as of now, there are over 2,000 kids enrolled in the programs on a regular basis. And you can see from the pictures what it looks like. This will be a field just like what's in those pictures with the air support structure. Staff report.
Why don't we go right to Mr. Gonzalez for a staff report, and then if we have questions, we'll come back. There we go.
Is that working? Okay. Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This PDD recreation zoned over 24-acre development is a site for Sousa Sport Complex. Development stems from a 2010 town board-owned motion to rezone the property for the sports complex. That town board action also adopted a finding statement amending the PDD to permit the construction of an indoor sports complex. In summary, it is a total of 5 sports fields, DPW Drive, and related site parking and improvements. Originally, the property was owned by the town. However, the new owner purchased the property around 2017, 2018, and is running the operations. A site plan was approved in 2018 for Phase 1, with minor amendments in 2021. The current application, Phase 2, is for the construction of Field 5, the temporary air-supported structure for that field, and a new 6,000 square foot retail therapy building. The proposed air-supported structure over Field 5 will be set up from November 15th through March 15th every year, then stored in one of the facility buildings on site. This general timeline is also a condition of the Zoning Board of Appeals grant. That's 231-23, in addition to the various setbacks that were granted from DPW Drive and Carlton Avenue, as well as light pole and ball net heights. The air structure is subject to a building permit as well as an annual tent permit from the fire marshal's office. And per the applicant's representative, the air supported structure is anchored to a foundation, and all setup and breakdown will be handled by a specific company hired by the owner. So just in short, the relaxations being requested tonight is a parking determination for the complex, as outdoor sports fields do not have a parking requirement, and that is under the planning board's jurisdiction. 420 stalls are provided. An FAR of 64.4% instead of the maximum 30%. Lot occupancy of 64.4% instead of the maximum permitted 15%. And a reduction of the previously approved 65-foot buffer fronting Field 5 along Carlton Avenue to 60 feet, so a reduction in 5 feet. As the project is essentially the same as the original, with the only change to a temporary air structure instead of the permanent indoor facility, and the small proposal of the retail therapy building, the parking does not appear to be an issue. Field 5 is separated from the rest of the sports complex by DPW Drive as a standalone parcel, So the FAR and lot occupancy are numerically high. However, all should be seen as one development. And if doing so, the total FAR is approximately 9.7% for the entire development. So lastly, the reduction of the natural buffer from 65 to 60 feet is minor. That buffer was mitigation for the original proposed permanent indoor structure that was going to be on Field 5, which originally measured 90 feet high compared to the now 75-foot temporary air-supported structure. It was not a specific CNR, but the change in proposal, staff have included the 5-foot reduction in the conditions. And given the structure height, a 60-foot buffer is still more than adequate. So based on the above, staff recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions.
Mr. Germano, do you want to add anything to that? When you have good submission, you don't have to do a present. When you have a good submission, you don't have to do any presentation in addition to that. Are there any questions from the board? Is there a motion? Mr. Brown?
Mr. Chairman, based on the staff report, I'm going to make a recommendation to approve the application, subject to the conditions.
There's a motion by Mr. Brown to grant the application subject to conditions, second by Mr. Ruggiero. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? The application is granted. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board.
Thank you. Planning Board application, decision item, AGMRA 195 13th Avenue LLC, PB 2023-009, east side of 13th Avenue, approximately 440 feet south of Peconic Street, Ronkonkoma, 195 13th Avenue. Applicant requests 2 Planning Board special permits for the outside overnight parking of registered vehicles and unattached box trailers as accessory to a warehouse use in the Industrial 1 District pursuant to 68-340.1C and P, respectively. Site plan modifications may also be requested as part of the application. Good evening, Mr. Guardino.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Anthony Guardino, law firm of Farrell Fritz, Hauppauge, New York, representing the applicant. Do we get the same offer as the last?
Absolutely. If you want to go with that, I
had to try.
Why don't we go right to a staff
Okay,
report
here
and
we
we'll come
go.
back.
I like that.
So we'll go to Ms. Wozniak on this one.
At the last public hearing, the board reserved decision in order to allow the applicant time to update their site plan to include improvements suggested by planning to increase landscaping and provide more screening of the overnight parking area. The applicant has since updated the site plan and was able to provide a vegetated berm along 13th Avenue to screen the overnight area from view. However, the applicant was unable to remove the parallel parking stalls in front of the building, as the applicant feels those stalls are frequently used and would like to keep them. In addition, the applicant did not want to remove any existing pavement behind the parking stalls on the west side of the property to provide more landscaping. Therefore, the applicant will still require a 23% front yard landscaping relaxation and a 6% overall landscaping relaxation. So if the board feels comfortable with the changes, planning has prepared conditions which outline the proposed improvements.
Thank you. Do you want to add anything?
Well, that my client has reviewed the conditions and finds them to be acceptable.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Is there a motion? Mr. Brown?
Chairman, I would make a motion to grant the application based on the staff report and the recommendations for the seniors.
It's a motion by Mr. Brown to grant the application subject to the covenants and restrictions. Is there a second?
Yeah.
Second by Mr. Moriarty. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The application is granted. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
You too. Final item on the agenda, planning board application, decision item. Is it Hedge Duck Realty LLC, PB 2023-018, east side of Smithtown Avenue, 209 feet south of Feldman Street, 1507 Smithtown Avenue, Bohemia. Applicant requests planning board special review and approval for a motor vehicle repair shop in the Industrial 1 District pursuant to 68-340.2B2 and a parking relaxation. Welcome back.
Thank you. Do I have the same level of comfort as everybody
Well,
else?
if you want to do that, we're happy to go that way. And I'll go right to Ms. Wozniak for a report.
All right, thank you. This one's short. The subject property is located on the east side of Smithtown Avenue across from the Old Normandy Inn, surrounded by light industrial development. The building is approximately 40,000 square feet with a mix of industrial tenants. Tonight, the applicant is looking to obtain planning board approval for a motor vehicle repair shop on the north side of the building. The shop repairs off-road vehicles like dirt bikes and ATVs. The shop itself is approximately 2,000 square feet with 2 lifts. There will be no exterior changes to the building or the site, and none of the vehicles are kept outside overnight. So based on this, planning recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions.
Thank you. Anything further from the applicant?
The only request from the property owner was in regards to planning board special permit condition number 8. He had just asked if it would be possible to remove the hose bib shall be installed adjacent to the dumpster to allow for a proper cleaning. It's already, there is no hose bib there. It's already installed in regards to the enclosure itself, and he says he pressure washes it frequently to make sure it's clean. And the site is indeed a clean site. So,
Ms. Wozniak? Ms. Wozniak says she's okay with that.
and we're good.
So are there any questions from the board? Is there a motion incorporating the amendment to item number 8, I think it was? Mr. Bruno?
Make a motion to grant the application with the change to covenant number 8, so that the requirement for the hose bib is not required, but that the area does need to be maintained clean and litter free.
Motion by Mr. Bruno to grant the application subject to the changing of covenant or item number 8, not requiring the hose bib, but still requiring it to be maintained and clean. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Matamore. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the application is granted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Ms. Cruz, is there a motion? Motion to adjourn, second by Mr. Moriarty. All in favor? Opposed, abstentions, we're adjourned. Thank you. Yes, Mr. I just want to state for the record that